Well, when we talked to Dave and Ben last week, one of the first questions we asked was, is it as bad as we think it is? Or are we just being paranoid? He goes, no, it's worse than you think it is.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
This is Jeremy from Oral Facial Implant Specialist in Deer Park, Illinois, and you are listening to Help Me with HIPAA podcast.
Welcome to episode 302 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT. Joining me on location live in St. Petersburg, Florida, is Donna Grindle of Carton.
Yes, we are outside our normal boundaries, escaped and into the wild.
That's funny. You think we have boundaries.
Well, it feels like that. It's the first time I've been to a conference. It's nice to be in healthcare because, everybody's been vaccinated pretty much. It's, a whole different world. But being at a conference is, it's kind of weird with people.
How are everybody acting?
Freaking out like, oh my god, I haven't seen you in forever.
Come here, let me give you a distance hug.
Yeah. That's the beauty of it. Yeah, today it's a crappy weather day, but hopefully it'll get a little better. But yesterday was a beautiful day, and of course we all had to be, everybody prefers to be outside anyway when you're down here and the weather's nice. That's the whole point. But we were out, I know you'll be surprised to hear we were out at the pool bar post-haste after we set up the booth. But everybody was coming in like, are we hugging? Because I need a hug. It was good to see everybody and hang out with, when you're at these things, you hang out with the vendors as much as you do the attendees. So it's nice. Yeah, but it's great, and we're at the Society of OMS Administrators, SOMSA.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good deal.
So
we'll make some good connections while you're down there.
I want to try, just random people talk to me.
Yeah. Listen to the podcast.
What's up? I wore my What's Up Breeches shirt last night for the reception.
Did you?
I'm wearing the Stay Out of My Breeches shirt today.
Today? So you need to take your phone out and say, all I need you to say is you're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. Here.
Got it. I'm on it.
There you go. Just one more thing to worry about.
Yeah. Nothing else to do.
Yeah. So speaking of one more thing to worry about, today's topic is get your patch on. Man, we're going to talk about some patching things and stuff we need to look at. And this is one of the areas we talk about fairly frequently. One being that you need to be aware of what's out there and have some way that you or somebody you're outsourcing to is tracking a lot of the things that you should be aware and concerned about. And patching is one of those things. And there's a lot of misunderstanding around patching. And yes, we mention this a lot, but it's worth mentioning a lot. Because we as MSPs, IT folks, we go out and we say, we do patch management, which we do. But there are more things we are not patching than we are patching because the systems aren't made to handle all patching of all things at all times. Therefore, there comes a level of responsibility of who's looking at the other stuff that needs to be patched. So there needs to be some conversation about, okay, Mr. IT, MSP, when you say patch management, what do you mean? What are you patching so that we can know what you're not patching? And we'll get into some of those because a lot of things we're going to be talking about today are actually things that probably aren't on everybody's radar for patching, but certainly need to know that. But before we dive into that, let's remind everybody the HIPAA Bootcamp, the virtual edition, August 17, 18, 19. Tickets are on sale now. Get them while they last.
Yeah, we're talking to people here about the boot camp. They're like, what's the HIPAA boot camp? Oh, let me tell you about the HIPAA boot camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So already selling tickets. People are jumping in there. will be the last one of 2021. So
yes, there will not be another this year. We've got enough to do.
Yep. We got some other stuff that we're rolling out. Not yet ready to announce, but
we're working on it. Like maybe,
yeah.
I don't know, next week or so.
Yep.
I'm pushing. I know. David just looked at me like, shut up.
Yeah, I had somebody email me yesterday, and they're like, I want to join HIPAA for MSPs, but the shopping cart's not there anymore. I'm like, I know. I closed it down. Because we were revamping.
Only.
Yeah, we're revamping some stuff, and I'm not ready to announce what all that is yet, but it's going to be killer.
I know. I'm excited. I'm very excited. I'm talking to some of the IT folks here about it, so. Yeah, I got a lot going on while I'm here, and I need to get this rocking and rolling because I'm supposed to be down there talking to people very soon.
All right. Well, we're going to dive into this one and probably make it a short one, so we'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
Knock it out.
Here we go.
So, what had happened was, that's always a shout out to my friend Brian Wilson. Whenever I say it, he knows I'm thinking of him. So, there was a big announcement that came out. All of this is from discussions from last week. Okay, so 12th through the 16th, somewhere in there. Anyway, NSA, CISA, all of the people, with the scary stuff knowledge, they came out with an announcement that 5 publicly known vulnerabilities that are out there that are actively being used by the Russian cyber teams against us right now. And, surely something, again, that if you are assuming that, oh, well, we're not government, we don't have to listen, you're wrong.
Oh, yeah. Well, when we talked to Dave and Ben last week, one of the first questions we asked was, is it as bad as we think it is? Or are we just being paranoid? He goes, no, it's worse than you think it is. That was kind of the sum of what he said.
Oh, yeah, those guys were great. So when we look at this, there are, 5 patches, 5 different products that are on that one alert. Now, when this stuff gets introduced, they give you its vulnerability CVE 2018-13379.
I know exactly what that is.
Yeah. And everybody glazes over.
Yeah.
If you don't have a clue what to do with that. So what we want you to know is, yes, these alerts may not make a lot of sense, but some of it is in English. And if you go read them, but what's important to you, if you are not the technical person, is that you have the list and you go to the technical people and say, do I use this? Has it been patched? Do I use this? Has it been patched? All the way through all of the ones when these kinds of alerts come out. I mean, granted, you don't want to track all of these.
No. Well, this is why MSPs come in and we try to put all of our own equipment in, because that's a question a lot of times. Like, why is it every time I hire a different MSP, they're wanting to snatch out all of my network equipment and put new stuff in? Well, part of the reason is because of this. If we're only having to track one specific brand of equipment, that's a lot easier than having to track 24 different brands of equipment across 100 different clients.
Yes, what David said. So in this list, he brings that up because the very first item on the list is the Fortinet FortiGate VPN product. So it tells you that if you have this, unauthenticated attackers can download system files via HTTP resource request. So not S. So it doesn't even, they can just go through a back door and pull things via HTTP. Very common thing. And would you say you knew the next one was Cinecore Zimbra Collaboration Suite?
Yeah, so Zimbra is like a business office suite for communication and collaboration. So, think of it like an alternative to Outlook type thing. So you can set up your own webmail or use the browser for it or whatever. But and there's other things it can do like instant messaging and stuff like that. But it's a collaboration suite.
Hence the name, Collaboration Suite.
There you go.
So if you use that, it has one that's currently being attacked. And then guess what? Another Pulse Secure VPN.
Yeah, VPNs are getting hit a lot lately. So, you get one, even if it's secure today, you still have to pay attention. Is it going to be secure tomorrow? Because, some of these they're not terrible VPNs. They're good VPNs, but they're getting attacked. Yeah. So it's not like the ones where it's the VPNs that are in foreign countries hosted by the hackers.
Well, and another thing I'd like to point out, the CVE 2018, CVE 2019, it's an indicator of how old it is.
Yes. That's not
I'm
good.
Just saying. Yeah. But you do need to make sure, because just like David said, it may not be. A lot of people have this attitude of, I don't need to patch my firewall all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with that attitude, but, everybody's got to make their own living. So for me...
I've never heard it put that way, but I guess you're right. Well, patching is one of those things from an IT standpoint where it's like hold your breath and cross your fingers and click the button. It really is, because I remember one time we had a client that we had some automatic patching happen, and then their POS system went down, and it took hours to figure out that they had to have a 3-year-old outdated version of Adobe something to work, or Java or something like that. It was like, dude, this has been way outdated. Why? But it has to have that version or it won't work.
Which tells you something about the security of the POS system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but anyway, the whole patching thing is some people are like, if it's not broke, don't patch it. Just leave it alone. Let it go.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. But in the meantime, you've got all these security issues that are coming up. And so your desire to not possibly cause a problem due to patching is hopefully outweighed by the fact that you have some security issues that you should be patching.
Which is that the key point that you used there was hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Because that means that they're actually looking at this stuff and saying, okay, those we've got to do.
Right.
Because security's involved. I can give you that. If you will review them and make decisions, and I'm going to load this one because of a security thing, I'll give you that. But don't say we can't do any, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Because promise you, it's probably broke. You just don't know it.
The other downside to all this is, like, when you look at the VPNs and stuff like that, there are often times where your IT team, whether it's internal or outsourced, they don't know oftentimes what all you're using, because software sneaks into the environment, or you're not paying for that level of management. And of course, a lot of MSPs don't follow a lot of this stuff. They're not out there looking at all the threat vectors that are coming in. They're very hyper focused on kind of just protecting what they offer, the Microsoft products and Google and stuff like that. They're not looking at everything else you have. So, but somebody needs to be.
That's the difference between IT and security.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's two different things. And if you think they're the same, back up. That might have been the case 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's gone.
Yeah. And that's where you have conversations about the difference between IT support and IT security or cybersecurity. Nowadays there's starting to become a separation of the two, which there should be. And we have people that, they're wanting IT security, not so much IT support. And I'm like, wow, this is a change. Used to be, it was like, I don't care about security. I just want you to make sure my printer prints.
I know. I do not miss that.
Yeah.
So the next thing is the Citrix Application Delivery Controller and Gateway. And just so that we can, roll those two together, the last one there is VMware Workspace One Access.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you heard, we use Citrix, we use VMware, so we don't have to worry?
Yeah. I mean, you hear that frequently when people are using products that are, higher end products or more, well recognized. What's the old saying? Nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that didn't last long. But today's world, that if you make assumptions that anything is secure, you're over. You're not secure.
Yeah.
The
And just
minute-
realize it's a point in time reference too. Like what you buy could be the absolute top of line best secure everything today. But that doesn't mean it's that way tomorrow. You've got to keep looking at what's going on. And as they come up with these CVEs and they're finding out what these problems are, that's when you need to know that these patches need to be happening. Because,
you take the list and go say, somebody figure this out.
Yeah. And part of this too, I had somebody ask me one time, like, why is there always so many updates and patches? Why can't they just fix all this stuff before they put the software out? Which I was like, does not work that way. So, in the software world, and this is really more of a statement for you than me, I'm not in the software world, but in the software world, they are really looking to get things out to the public as quickly as possible. There is an expectation that you don't put out a product that is absolutely 100% ready. You throw it out at the stage in which you feel that it can live on its own, and then you fix it along the way.
That's years ago, the programming techniques changed to what we call more of an agile, and you'll hear them call it agile, and there's some hybrid versions, but the idea is the old static way of doing it delayed things from being the innovation. Mm-hmm. Because we would take the time, we would design it, we would plan it out, develop it, send it to quality control, they would test it, they would send it back, and it would go back and forth till they felt like everything was handled, and then it would go into a release bucket that then would get released periodically, and they weren't released on a regular basis. And that's back when you get your little CD, and the updates.
Yeah. Now, used to the only way you got updates and patches was when you bought the next version.
Exactly. But then it was like people didn't want to wait for that next feature. Mm-hmm. They want that next feature. They want that one little change. Go ahead and give it to me whenever it's ready. And so there's a whole story involving like a ski lodge and all of this, but everybody got together and came up with this idea that, we can write in all of these little units and test the best we can. But as soon as you think that it can go in the wild, roll it out. So they're rolling these things out on a regular basis. And that's why we're able to constantly have new features that are coming in, and you're not getting like a chunk of new features. You get a new feature or 4 new features. Mm-hmm. The downside of that, though, is that whole quality control and back and quality control and back that we used to have, gone.
Yeah. And I think the whole smartphone app thing has really messed with that process, because now we expect software to change rapidly. In fact, we expect the graphical user interface to change fairly frequently. It's like if it's been a year and we don't see something change on the graphics interface side, we're like, oh, this is old junk. We expect a fresh new look fairly frequently.
Well, some people do. Others are like, don't change it. I'm very comfortable.
No.
But that's why you don't see that same kind of, why aren't these fixed? That's one reason. The other reason is there's so many layers in software today. I mean, you only had 2 or 3 to deal with. You had the machine, you had the operating system, you had your software. Now, to make things because everybody writes in these little bitty units, if you will,
Mhm.
but there's all these different people are writing all these different pieces, and
Mhm.
it's a whole different world than what your brain thinks is happening. That is not how it's happening. Not at all. Not at all. So that's why something way out here out of nowhere in left field is like all these applications have it because somebody wrote one tiny little thing.
Mhm.
So that's why it doesn't get there.
This is why we recommend too, and I mentioned on a previous podcast, twice a year, do some spring cleaning on your machines. I use the example of the time change. So when there's a time change and you're changing your clocks and your batteries in your smoke alarm, go through your software and your systems. And when whatever you don't need anymore, get rid of it, because that's one less thing you've got to worry about, having vulnerabilities, having to patch and all that. Just get rid of it.
Same thing with data.
Mm-hmm.
Digital clutter is a problem. And
I had somebody hand me about a dozen tape drives the other day. It said, "Can you destroy these?" I'm like, "I'll be happy to." Why are you still holding on to this stuff?
Yeah, you don't need them, and the decay line is probably way low anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But to add to the CISA NSA announcement, we also had our Microsoft monthly Patch Tuesday.
Yeah, and this is always a stressful time for IT folks, because it seems that every time we have a patch come out, first of all, a good IT provider or IT, internal IT, whatever, hopefully they're doing some patch testing and whitelisting and all that. That's pretty standard nowadays, but hopefully they are. So understand that when the patch comes out on Tuesday, don't apply it on Tuesday, or probably not Wednesday or Thursday either. There's a time frame. The unfortunate part is you're being notified on Tuesday there's all these vulnerabilities, and you're like, "Oh, patch. And everybody's like, wait a minute. Because, there's all these other things that's changing the environment. We can't just throw out all these patches oftentimes. But man, Microsoft is so bad about breaking stuff with their patches. Oh my gosh.
Again, it's like all these different groups writing their own things, and until they end up in the same environment, you don't see it.
Yeah. We went through 2 weeks ago, we started rolling out some patches from last month, and we had half a dozen clients call and say, every time I try to print, I'm getting a blue screen. Like, and it was all because of a patch. So we had to patch the patch so that it would work.
There's often a patch for the patch.
Yeah, I know.
The patch, leaves a little area over here and creates a, we blocked that hole and it made another one burst.
Mm-hmm. I feel like myself as a kid back, just reminds me of going to school, elementary school, and I'm walking around with all these patches on my jeans because I couldn't afford new jeans. And there was patches on top of patches. When you wore a hole in your knee, you just got another patch on top of the patch.
Yeah, we had certainly, on the farm, it's like, well, you done tore a nail through that one. Let's put another one on.
Yeah. But see, nowadays you tear a hole in your clothes and you're like, hey, I'm in style. Back then you had to wear patches.
And yes, they were stylish then. So in this batch of patch, the batch of patches.
Say that again.
They fixed 110 vulnerabilities.
Wow.
In it, but 19 classified as critical, and 1 classified as currently under attack. Okay, so those have got to be dealt with. So there's 20 that you got to deal with. Right, Mr. Security Guy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
no pressure, no stress, none at all.
Well, particularly the one that's actively under attack. You want to make sure that's taken care of post haste. But then the critical ones, you got to deal with those, so you might as well do them all at the same time, those 20 at the same time.
Yeah, just rip the Band-Aid off.
Right there you go. Get her done. But if your current plan
Mm-hmm.
doesn't include, if your people say, well, we load patches once a month, and that's really all you need to know, we've got this. But nobody's saying we evaluate for, serious problems and handle those as soon as possible. What would you say, David?
I would say you have a problem.
Problemo.
Yeah.
So how are you handling these 2020 issues? You have the tools because you got the Mac Daddy tools. But
yeah. We typically go out and go ahead and just push them out. We do a cascading push out because we don't need all of our clients having issues at the same time in case there's a problem. So we will cascade them out. Typically, it's based on maybe the size and complexity of the organization, or certainly if it's healthcare, we tend to push those first, and then as it goes down the line, because we do more than healthcare, but those that have no compliance concerns and very little worry, or less worry, I should say, about security, because we do have some clients, their data is nowhere near as critical as healthcare. So, we push them down the list a little bit, but we do try to still roll them all out within a week and get them all patched up.
See, that's the way it's supposed to be done. Now, for you to go back to your IT provider, IT department, I got a guy, whatever, and understand that if you're not patching these, remember where we were talking about 2018, 2019, one of those original 5 that were on the alert was from 2020. Everything else, 2018, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not dealing with all of those, that's part of the problem. The big WannaCry and not pet you, that ransomware attacks that spread around the world rapidly within a 24-hour period. It was just everybody was getting shut down. And many companies lost a bunch of data and spent a boatload of money in recovering from those. And both cases were due to an unpatched Microsoft vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I will say we have done a mass patch when it's something that's like an active vulnerability where it's you can almost see it moving. You know what I'm saying? It's like it started here, it's going here. And one thing about the spread of these types of problems is it can literally spread across the world in minutes. And so you don't have a lot of time. That's why I always think it's kind of funny when somebody's like, we're under attack, ransomware attack. Everybody start running around and unplugging stuff, which I think is a good idea. But it also serves to kind of promote the fallacy that this stuff moves slow. It doesn't. It can affect the entire organization in seconds. So it's not like you've got time to finish your coffee and go figure it out. To get to move on it. But, when the SolarWinds hack thing happened, that as soon as they're identifying stuff, our team and our tools are already starting to look for the vulnerabilities, patching things that they need to be patched. It's looking for the file changes that the particular attack makes to see if the file changes are in effect. So there's a lot happening behind the scenes.
Yes, but no one knows about it, do they, David? They just know everything's working fine.
Yeah, there's that balance between, do you tell the client everything or do you only tell them some things? Because they don't want to know everything. Honestly, they don't. The other thing too is they'll get the fatigue of telling them almost daily, here's all these things we're doing to protect you. So you have to roll them up into, a monthly or a quarterly type of meeting or something like that. But, you also don't want to freak people out. We stay freaked out enough in IT. I don't want to call my clients every day.
Well, I as a client, I would like to see when these come out, here's a notification that the NSA, FBI, CISA, whoever released this, and we have reviewed all of our clients, nobody's got it, or something along those lines. And specifically, Microsoft, come on, everybody's out there assuming that it's taken care of. There were 19 critical and 1 actively being, tell me that. And we took care of it. then I at least know that you're doing things behind the scene that never caused a problem. And I can document that my people are paying attention so that I can prove somebody cares.
Yeah, that's right. Because you got to prove it.
It's too much. But if you are not worried about this because you assume that someone's taking care of it, but you haven't really had a conversation to understand it,
Mm-hmm.
just like David brought up, he tries to tell people that you need to understand we don't patch everything. But let's have a conversation about patching so that we know who's going to take care of the things that we don't take care of.
Yeah. I mean, we even have people that hire us for IT and then they say, it might be a year down the road and they'll say something like, well, you're patching our phones, right? And I'm like, we never had a conversation about phones. I don't know where this come from. Yeah, we're not managing your phones. It's just, again, it's just one of those things where there just needs to be more communication between IT and the other decision makers because there's so many things that people just go, oh yeah, IT's got it. Really?
Yeah,
well, can you confirm that? Yeah.
IT's got it. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
You should be discussing what they're doing to deal with the changing threat landscape. It is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. And
go
if you're
forth
here,
and ask questions.
And if your response you're getting is, don't worry about it, or we got this, or how dare you ask me that, or a bunch of tech jargon talking over your head, whatever. If any of those are the responses you're getting, that's a bad sign.
Yeah. Well, you remember the story Gary told where a fairly large practice of some sort that they get called into to respond to a data breach, ransomware attack, something like that. And they had received an alert from their insurance company who covers cyber, who was trying to make sure that they cut their losses. And that insurance company sends out a thing, make sure you're doing all of this. And they call in their IT provider who says, I am a computer engineer. They're an insurance company. Who are you going to believe is taking care of things? Had that attitude, and then they get hit with ransomware. And guess what? It was caused by not having all those things in place that the insurance company's alert was.
Mm-hmm.
And he told the story, and you and I both were, we've seen people like that.
Yeah, there's a number of pretentious people, shall we say, in IT, and some in medical and
pretentious.
Yeah, so
arrogant or both.
Yeah, but it's certainly worth, again, have the conversation. You should not get any kind of pushback from having this kind of conversation.
No.
But just understand too, you don't want to go to your IT people and say, we want to be notified of every alert, of every possible problem, because that's not something you really want.
Yes, we do not want to do that. Nay. Yeah, because if you saw every possible alert, then it would be alert fatigue. So what you want to see are, anything that is a major kind of push. And part of those Microsoft updates, there were 4 or 5 more Microsoft Exchange that came out once they found one 0-day and they were in there attacking that and it was spreading rapidly. Then they find more. And so if you're using Exchange server, you need to know that somebody's taking care of that because it's bad.
Yeah.
Period.
And this brings up a good question that sometimes I get asked. Matter of fact, I got asked recently because we have an insurance agency that had a third-party vendor breach. And the question that the guy brought to me, the owner of the company, said, with all this push to go to the cloud, would I have not been better off having my data locally? And I said, in this situation, possibly, because the breach happened to the third-party vendor. However, the third-party vendor probably has a lot more ability to secure that data than you do. And so even though it still happened, chances are it would have happened a lot sooner if you just had it stuck in your office and you don't have good security, good cyber hygiene, and all those things. So in theory, pushing it to the cloud, if you're using Microsoft, Google, and some of these bigger companies, they're better equipped to protect you than you are to protect yourself. But you have to weigh those options and make that risk reward decision, cost benefit analysis type thing. But that's a question I'm starting to hear people ask more, which I knew at some point it would come. Like, okay, is it really better to be in the cloud? Should we be going back to having everything in-house?
Well, for the vast majority of small business, the cloud's going to be a better solution for them almost always, because they're not going to secure those servers. We know it. They never did before. And it's, unless you're willing to make the investment in proper security, you're still better off going to the cloud, as long as you're vetting your vendors and making sure they're making the investment on your behalf.
Yeah. The other side of it is people aren't really willing to pay what it takes to manage, monitor, secure on-site infrastructure. That's part of what makes the cloud, quote unquote, better, because you're paying $8, $12 a user, and you're getting all this infrastructure in place for pennies. If you do all that yourself, are you going to pay to have your specific infrastructure secured, managed, monitored, all that? In most cases, you're not.
And that's really the cost benefit analysis. You need to understand what that costs.
Yeah. It's not, hey, I can pay for it one time and use it for years, well past, when you should be using it. Because we, all the time we see people on Microsoft products that's like, dude, this thing went out of service 3 years ago. Why are you still using it? Because it works.
I don't need to replace it. It still works.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
anyway,
that's where the big cost is to understand ongoing maintenance and security is going to be a level of expense that you must incur in order to bring things back on-prem.
Yep.
I'm sorry. In order to bring things back into your office. I'm trying to speak English. On-prem is on premises.
Yeah.
So if you are not willing to make that investment, then stay in the cloud, please. Just vet the vendors and understand what you're getting. If you're getting the cheapest vendor out there, might want to ask why they're so cheap.
Oh gosh.
Cheap.
Yeah. Yeah, we have that conversation sometimes with prospects. Why are you so much more than everybody else? I'm like, you should be asking them, why are they so much cheaper? That's scary, because I know what it takes to do what we do, and there's no way you can do it at that price point. So they're cutting a lot of corners somewhere. You really need to be concerned about that.
You're such a sales guy.
No, it's well, maybe a little bit. But I do think people they often don't ask the right questions. And part of what I try to do is get people to understand these are the questions that you should be asking and things you should be thinking about. It's not all about, really, at the end of the day, the dollar amount should be the very last thing you're concerned about. You should be talking about business associate agreements first, and then you should be talking about what you're doing to secure people and how you're handling patch management. All those things should be out on the table first. And then you start looking at the price. But typically it's backwards. Give me a price and then we'll decide if we can talk.
We'll talk then.
Yep.
All right, mister. I'm supposed to be downstairs in 3 minutes, standing at the table, smiling at people.
You will be. So that is our show for today, folks. Thanks for listening. Be sure to catch us next week for another exciting episode. And until then, remember, for Donna and myself, HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.